In the quiet suburbs where I had chosen to settle down, life was meant to be serene. My little home, with its flourishing garden and well-kept hedges, was my sanctuary. The hedge, in particular, was more than just a boundary. It was a symbol of my hard work and pride. It represented my commitment to maintaining my property and respecting the shared aesthetics of our community. However, this peaceful existence was soon disrupted by the persistent interference of the Homeowners Association, an entity that wielded power with an iron fist. Their members, who often acted like self-appointed enforcers of neighborhood standards, began encroaching on my space with alarming frequency. They would trample over my hedge during their inspections, claiming it was too wild or unsightly for community standards. Each time they disregarded my property, I felt a sense of violation that was deeply personal. My attempts to reason with them were met with ridicule and dismissive comments, as if my concerns were inconsequential. It became clear that their bullying tactics weren't just about rules. They reveled in exerting their authority over homeowners like me. Frustration built within me as I realized that my peaceful home had turned into a battleground against these self-righteous bullies. I knew I had to take a stand, not just for myself, but for anyone else who felt powerless against the overreach of the HOA. Little did they know, I was already formulating a plan that would turn the tables on them and reclaim my peace once and for all. As my frustration grew, I began to recognize the specific tactics the HOA employed to bully homeowners into submission. Their methods were not only aggressive, but also surprisingly calculated. Each time I would see them approaching, clipboard in hand, I felt a sense of dread wash over me. It was as if they thrived on instilling fear and compliance among the residents. One particularly memorable encounter took place during a routine inspection. A member of the HOA, whom I'll refer to as Mr. Thompson, strode up to my property with an air of authority. He pointed out every minor flaw he could find, all while ignoring the fact that his own yard was in disarray. He declared my hedge an eyesore and threatened me with fines if I didn't trim it back immediately. His condescending tone made it clear that he saw himself as above reproach, and his words stung like a sharp blade. Another tactic involved intimidation through group gatherings. The HOA would organize meetings where they openly criticized homeowners who dared to question their authority. Rumors spread quickly, and soon enough, I found myself ostracized by some neighbors who had fallen under the sway of the association's influence. They would whisper about the troublemaker who couldn't keep up with community standards, further isolating me. Despite these tactics meant to intimidate and silence dissent, I refused to back down. As I observed their behavior more closely, it became painfully clear that their bullying was rooted in control rather than genuine concern for community aesthetics. This realization ignited a fire within me, a determination to confront these tactics and reclaim my territory once and for all. As the HOA's bullying tactics continued to escalate, I reached a breaking point. Each encounter left me feeling more disheartened and frustrated, but instead of succumbing to despair, I felt a spark igniting within me. I realized that if I wanted to protect my home and my hedge, I would need to take a stand, this time on my own terms. The decision to fight back wasn't made lightly. I spent countless nights tossing and turning, contemplating how best to confront the bullies who had taken so much joy in belittling my efforts. I knew that simply confronting them directly would likely lead to further hostility. Instead, I needed a plan, something clever enough to catch them off guard and make them think twice before encroaching on my property again. I began to brainstorm ideas, thinking through every possible scenario. It was during one of these late-night sessions that the concept of setting a trap struck me like a bolt of lightning. The idea was both amusing and brilliantly simple. I would create a situation that would expose their overreach while simultaneously reclaiming my territory in a way that would be hard for them to dismiss. As excitement bubbled up inside me, I started sketching out my plan. I envisioned a humorous yet effective trap that would not only protect my hedge, but also serve as a lesson for the HOA members about respecting boundaries. With each detail I mapped out, I felt more empowered and ready to take action. This was no longer just about the hedge. It was about standing up for myself and taking control of my narrative in this suburban battlefield. With my decision made, the next step was to meticulously plan the ultimate trap. I needed a scheme that was both clever and harmless, something that would catch the HOA members off guard while delivering a clear message about respecting my property. I began by sketching out ideas on a piece of paper, envisioning what would not only be effective but also entertaining. I thought about using harmless but surprising elements. A classic prank came to mind, a simple net or tripwire system that would safely ensnare anyone who dared to cross into my hedge. But I wanted to add an extra layer of creativity. My trap needed a touch of humor to make it memorable, something that would ensure everyone involved would have a story to tell without causing any real harm. After some brainstorming, I settled on a plan involving brightly colored balloons and confetti. The idea was to rig balloons filled with confetti above the hedge so that when someone pushed through, they would trigger the release of a colorful cascade. Not only would it create a spectacle, but it would also serve as an undeniable reminder of their trespass. I could already picture their faces, confusion followed by laughter, as they found themselves covered in confetti for their arrogance. Gathering supplies became an adventure in itself. I enlisted the help of a few trusted neighbors who understood my plight and were eager to support my mission. We pooled our resources and spent hours preparing the materials, all while giggling at the absurdity of it all. By the time we finished, I felt an exhilarating mix of anticipation and nervousness. I was ready to set my plan into motion and finally reclaim my space from the HOA bullies. The day had finally arrived to execute my carefully crafted trap, and my excitement was palpable. I awoke early, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I double-checked everything. The sun was shining, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood, and I could already envision how my plan would unfold. With my supplies in hand, balloons, confetti, and a few lengths of string, I set to work. My heart raced as I rigged the balloons just right, ensuring they were positioned perfectly above the hedge. I secured the tripwire that would trigger the surprise when someone pushed through. Each knot tied felt like a step closer to reclaiming my space and dignity from the HOA bullies. As I finished setting up the trap, I took a moment to admire my handiwork. The vibrant colors of the balloons bobbed gently in the breeze, and I couldn't help but chuckle at the thought of the HOA members being met with an explosion of confetti. It was both whimsical and satisfying, a fitting response to their absurdity. I then settled into a discreet vantage point, hidden behind a nearby tree, my pulse racing with anticipation. I knew that HOA inspections typically happen on Thursdays, so I kept my eyes peeled for any signs of their arrival. Time seemed to stretch as I waited, every rustle of leaves making me jump slightly. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I spotted Mr. Thompson and his fellow HOA members approaching with their usual swagger. They chatted among themselves, completely unaware of the surprise awaiting them. My heart pounded with excitement as they drew nearer to my hedge, and I held my breath in anticipation, ready for the moment when they would cross that invisible line and trigger my plan. As the HOA members approached my hedge, I could feel the tension in the air. They were oblivious to the trap that awaited them, their laughter and chatter echoing in the quiet morning. I leaned in closer, my heart racing with both excitement and a hint of nervousness. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the culmination of all my planning and determination. Mr. Thompson led the group, his clipboard in hand, as he surveyed the area with a critical eye. He stepped forward, preparing to make yet another snide remark about my hedge, when suddenly he brushed against the tripwire. In an instant, balloons burst overhead, showering him and his companions with a cascade of colorful confetti. The sight was surreal. Their expressions morphed from confusion to shock, then erupted into laughter. "What the?" Mr. Thompson exclaimed, looking up as confetti rained down around him like a festive cloud. The other HOA members stood frozen for a moment, their bewildered faces turning into wide grins. I couldn't help but stifle a laugh from my hiding spot. It was pure comedic gold. As they shook off the confetti, one member jokingly exclaimed, "Looks like we've been ambushed." The atmosphere shifted dramatically as they began to see the humor in the situation. Rather than feeling humiliated or angry, They seemed to appreciate the cleverness of the prank. I watched as they shared jokes and good-natured banter among themselves, realizing that perhaps this experience would serve as a wake-up call for them. I felt a mix of relief and triumph wash over me. My plan had worked. My hedge had become a symbol not just of resistance, but also of camaraderie and laughter. The HOA bullies had finally met their match, and I couldn't help but smile at how beautifully it had all unfolded. In the aftermath of the trap, the atmosphere in my neighborhood shifted dramatically. The initial shock of the confetti ambush soon gave way to laughter and lightheartedness. Mr. Thompson and the other HOA members began sharing stories of their own embarrassing moments, creating an unexpected bond among us. The whole incident turned into a neighborhood spectacle, with neighbors coming out to witness the commotion and join in on the fun. As I stepped out from my hiding spot, I was met with a mix of surprised expressions and knowing smiles. Mr. Thompson approached me with a sheepish grin. "Well played," he admitted, clearly still brushing confetti from his hair. "I guess we've been taking ourselves a bit too seriously." His acknowledgement felt like a turning point. Perhaps this prank had cracked the rigid facade that the HOA had built around itself. In the following days, I noticed a notable change in how the HOA interacted with me and other residents. They seemed more approachable, even joking about their newfound confetti reputation. The initial tension between us had dissipated, replaced by a quirky sense of camaraderie. Neighbors who had previously felt intimidated by the HOA's authority began to speak up more, emboldened by what I had done. While I never intended for my hedge to become a source of community bonding, it suddenly represented something bigger, standing up against bullying and reclaiming our power as homeowners. The experience not only reinforced my resolve, but also sparked conversations about respect and boundaries within our community. It was clear that my little trap had transformed not just my relationship with the HOA, but also how we all viewed our roles within the neighborhood. A reminder that sometimes laughter can be the best way to diffuse tension and foster understanding. As the dust settled from the confetti ambush, I found myself reflecting on the unexpected journey I had taken. What began as a struggle against HOA bullies had transformed into a valuable lesson about community, resilience, and the power of humor. The initial tension that had clouded my interactions with the HOA members had lifted, allowing for a newfound sense of cooperation and openness among neighbors. In the weeks that followed, I noticed a significant shift in our neighborhood dynamic. Residents who once felt intimidated began to voice their concerns more freely, standing up against petty grievances that had previously gone unchallenged. The confetti incident served as a catalyst for change, reminding everyone that it was okay to push back against perceived authority when it overstepped its bounds. I also took time to appreciate my hedge, a simple plant that had become a symbol of my determination. I realized that it wasn't just about preserving my property, but about fostering an environment where every homeowner felt empowered to protect their space. My small act of rebellion sparked conversations about mutual respect and understanding within our community. Looking back, I felt proud of how I handled the situation. Rather than allowing frustration to consume me, I channeled it into something creative and fun. It reminded me that sometimes standing up for oneself doesn't have to come with confrontation. It can be done with wit and humor. Ultimately, my experience taught me that community is built on relationships, and that those relationships thrive on communication and respect. As I tended to my hedge, now more vibrant than ever, I felt a renewed sense of belonging in my neighborhood. I had not only defended my territory, but also helped cultivate a spirit of camaraderie that would last long after the confetti settled. As I reflected on my experience with the HOA bullies, several key lessons emerged, each more valuable than the last. First and foremost, I learned the importance of standing up for oneself. It's all too easy to feel overwhelmed by authority figures, especially when they wield their power without consideration for others. However, confronting these challenges doesn't always require aggression. Sometimes a little creativity and humor can be far more effective. I also discovered that community dynamics are fragile yet adaptable. The confetti incident acted as a catalyst for open dialogue among neighbors who had previously felt isolated or intimidated. It reminded me that we are all in this together, and when one person stands up, it can inspire others to do the same. It reinforced the idea that we should support one another and foster an environment where everyone feels empowered to voice their concerns. Another lesson was the significance of perspective. What initially seemed like a battle against bullies transformed into an opportunity for connection. By shifting my focus from confrontation to creativity, I was able to turn an adversarial situation into something lighthearted and unifying. This taught me that even in challenging circumstances, there's a chance to find common ground and build understanding. Finally, I learned that humor can be a powerful tool in diffusing tension. Laughter has a remarkable way of bringing people together, breaking down barriers, and fostering camaraderie. The experience left me with a sense of empowerment and hope for the future of my community. As I tended to my hedge, a now vibrant symbol of resilience, I felt grateful for the journey that had unfolded. Each lesson learned would guide me moving forward, reminding me that standing up for oneself can lead not only to personal growth, but also to stronger connections within our neighborhoods.